wake that ass up.
Early in the morning.
The Breakfast Club.
Yep, it's the world's most dangerous morning show, The Breakfast Club. Charlamagne the God, Jess Hilarious, DJ Envy. Envy is not here today, but Loren LoRosa is, and we have a very special guest. She is the host of the Joy Reid Show. Yes. Joy-Ann Reid, good morning.
Good morning.
How are you?
I am wonderful, thank you. Blessed and highly favored.
There you go. Blessed, black, and highly favored.
Blessed, black, and moisturized.
There you go.
Blessed, moisturized, black, and highly favored. How about
there you go. Now that you've stepped away from MSNBC, what's something that you wish more people knew about doing a nightly cable news show, Joy?
About doing a nightly cable news show?
Yes.
It's a grind. Mm-hmm. I mean, it really is. And I did a weekend show. You know, I did a dayside show. I had 3 shows in MSNBC. And the difference between a weekend, which is like leisurely, like you're just like actually just kind of taking in all that happened, even though, you know, Trump makes it challenging because he's doing something stupid every day. Mm-hmm. But on a nightly show, it's literally a grind. And it was like 15 producers, a total of like 60 people made that show. It looks like we're just on there yapping. No, it's like a grind, and it's a huge team to do a cable news show, which is far different when you're doing something independent.
What is the reality of the Joy Reid show on MSNBC? Like, why did it come to an end? Because you heard so many different rumors. They were saying the ratings were low. Trump didn't want her there anymore.
Right. He probably didn't.
like what was it?
So the thing is that's so interesting, and Stephen A. Smith tried to come for me and say, "Oh, ratings." It's like, yeah, no, that wasn't it. Everybody after the 2024 election, all of cable news went in the toilet. Like everybody's ratings dropped. And we had actually just had a ratings meeting like 2 weeks before I was fired, where they were like, you guys are actually losing, you guys are lost less than, your competitors, and you're actually doing fine. So ratings were fine. We were doing fine. And, the ratings have not gotten better since I left. They've actually gotten, so it's not like it wasn't numbers.
I haven't watched it all.
Yeah. So it's not numbers. It wasn't ratings. And when I got the call, we at first thought it was a rumor. We had seen that there was this like Puck story that Friday where, and we didn't know what to do with it. We had already done our show. We had wrapped. I was having my cocktail. My executive producer called me and said, look, all of our producers are freaking out over this Puck story, so you should see it. And it was like a rumor. We were like, nah, we hadn't heard anything. Nobody had called me. Nobody had said, you did something wrong. You're in trouble. You're on probation. I had gotten nothing. Then I get a text message then early the next morning saying, can you talk at noon? And I was fired immediately. There was no warning. So and I asked, well, what's nothing. They were just like, oh, we just want to make some changes. They never said why. So I've had to live in the rumor mill with everybody else.
Mm-hmm. So you still don't really know
No.
Do you feel like, because you were brought in at the height of 2020 with the election, when the firing happened, was there any feeling of you were used as a voice just during that time and then they wanted to step away?
No, I think, just myself, I think about the things that were making management uncomfortable that I can tell you were, stated to me. And the 2 things that I think made, and I don't think it's just the management there. I think that in the cable news world and the news world in general, these 2 topics make management uncomfortable in the media in general. One of them is Trump, because Trump is suing everybody. Yeah. I mean, he's literally threatening people to the point where 60 Minutes is shook, where ABC News is shook. He's verbally threatened Comcast by name, named Brian Roberts by name. And all of these are businesses that want to do business that need the FCC's approval. They actually have to have the federal government's approval to do mergers, acquisitions. He can't hurt them.
The broadcast, you can get your license taken away.
He can pull your license. They can't do it to cable because FCC doesn't regulate cable, but you have broadcast partners. Yeah. And you see the fact that NBC broadcast was physically separated from MSNBC. That feels protective, right? We got to protect our broadcast assets, which the FCC can. So it's like everyone is trying to navigate this really deranged man who is so emotional, and he behaves so emotionally that if he's mad at you in one moment, he may stop your mergers just because he feels like it, like he bombed Iran. He's just like, I'm pissed off. And so I think they're activating out of a sense of we don't want to poke the bear too much. And, and I'm not the only person that was doing it. There are lots of people at MSNBC. That was kind of our brand. We were the resistance, right? And we're sincere about it. We weren't making it up. All of us in Prime, we were serious about what we were saying. So I think that was one piece. I think the other piece is Gaza. And you just can't get away from the fact that talking about Gaza in a way that humanizes Palestinians is not the usual way that cable news operates or that any news in this country operates. For whatever reason, that topic makes people uncomfortable. And it doesn't make regular folks uncomfortable because I think the majority of Americans agree that what's happening there is not just a genocide, but is unconscionable for us to participate in. I think most Americans believe that, agree with that. But there's a discomfort with that topic that I saw in the policing of my social media, in requests to not like certain things on social media. There was a sense that topic, it makes people uncomfortable.
Saying you want to see innocent men, women, and children not be killed shouldn't make anybody uncomfortable.
It shouldn't. It didn't with Rwanda. When the Hutu and the Tutsi were slaughtering each other, we very easily in the media said that was a genocide, right? I mean, if you look at what Russia is doing to Ukraine, when they bomb a school or a hospital or a music school, that is reported as barbaric. It's reported as genocidal. When they're stealing Ukrainian children and kidnapping them to Russia, there's moral clarity from the media, and there's no hesitation to say that what Russia is doing is evil. But when it comes to what's happening to the people in Gaza, number one, it isn't talked about that much on U.S. media. If you go overseas, it's on a lot more. And then number two, the way it's spoken about is, I don't know, maybe it's like when a friend is doing something wrong, you don't want to talk about them, you don't want to say anything negative, but there is a hesitation. I definitely think that's a thing in American media.
Has anybody from the show reached out to you since the layoff?
I still talk to all of my friends that are over there. You know what I mean? I mean, the beautiful thing about MSNBC, I think there's an assumption in that the media world is super competitive and that people are catty and competitive. The people that I worked with at MSNBC, we genuinely are friends. Like, they are incredible people, brilliant people. I mean, Rachel Maddow is like an actual genius. Like, that is real. You know, Nicole Wallace, lovely person. You know, I still talk to Stephanie Rule. That's my girl. She's cuckoo crazy. She's a lot of fun. Y'all should have her on here. She is a hoot. You know, Alex Wagner, that's my girl. You know what I mean? Like, these are my people. I love Chris Hayes. Like, these are my people. So I still, you know, keep in touch. And a lot of the producers from my show, I'm still in touch with them because we weren't like faking being friends. Like, we were actually friends. So I still have deep respect for the people who are on air over there. And the people I worked with, I think they were all genuine and sincere human beings. And I loved my crew and my team, and I still talk to them.
One thing that bothered me about the situation was your last show, February 24th. It was your final show, and everybody rallied around. Let's make sure we watch Joy-Ann Reid's final show, her last show, and it debuted first in the demo for MSNBC, and it was number 2 amongst all total viewers. And I'm sitting back like, why didn't y'all niggas do that every night? If you do that every night, then you make it very, very hard for them to, you know, get rid of her, and they really got to explain themselves. How did that make you feel?
No, it is a great point because, like, if you think about the movie Sinners, right? Everybody's doing content off of Sinners. It's become like the number one content creator on YouTube and everywhere else. But if people didn't go rush in that theater and sit down and pay money and watch Sinners in real life, Ryan Coogler would not have the power that you said. I mean, it would decrease his power. You have to actually support what you say you support. And I think one of the lessons learned, I think, for us as a community is that if there's something that you love and a person that you value, you're going to have to give them the ratings and the support in order to not be fireable.
Absolutely. And then another thing I actually loved, I didn't get to speak to you this night because it was at an event, but we were at the it was the National Action Network.
Your National Action Network.
And it was the night that Patti LaBelle got honored and a lot of other folks, and it was an MSNBC table. So it was like the new president of MSNBC. It was all the big wigs. And they called your name and just shouted you out, and you stood up, and that crowd applauded for like 2-3 minutes. And I was just looking at them to see how they were acting. They were all looking down. They was like, damn, this ain't over yet.
Yeah.
How did that feel? That had to feel good.
I was at the next table.
The very next day, right.
I was literally at the neighboring table. It was so weird. And the thing that's so interesting is that I had actually had a great conversation with Phil Griffin, the person who actually, gave me my primetime show. And he and I had a great time. Chris Matthews was there. He and I chopped it up. We were chatting. It was wild. I mean, first of all, I felt so appreciative. I love being with my people because, that's when you get your strength. Like, that's your superpower, right? It's infused into you by just being around Black people. And so I loved that night. It was so much fun just to be there. I felt so good. I felt so loved. But it was very surreal to be at the literal neighboring table to what just was my ex-boss, I guess, my former boss. So I don't know how she felt about it, but I felt good.
Did they speak to you that night?
She and I did not. She did not approach me at all and did not speak to me. No.
No eye contact, no nothing, no.
No, ma'am.
She damn sure knew you was there.
Yeah, because Reverend Sharpton was like, Joy and Reid, sit right there, everybody. So yeah, she knew I was there. Yeah, she did not. She had nothing. She said nothing to me since the firing.
Wow.
Do you feel like you've been treated differently, right, in the industry because you're no longer on TV?
You know what's really interesting is I probably expected that's what would happen. And now that I'm doing, my independent show, my big question was, how challenging is it going to be to book this show, right? Because you're not booking somebody to come on MSNBC. The opposite has happened. We have a backlog of guests who are asking to come on. We've had no problem getting bookings and getting support. And I've just been actually pretty overwhelmed by how quickly the channel has grown. Our growth trajectory is really good and really fast. And so actually, I am very blessed to say, no issues.
In under 2 weeks, you reached 1 million views on the channel.
We reached 1 million streams in literally a week.
Wow.
That just shows you what you built there at MSNBC. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And those people went with you.
Yeah.
I think that's really dope.
And I think one of the things that people are not catching in the mainstream media world, which I think you understand, Charlamagne, just from doing this show, is that the way that people consume news and information now is not through networks. They consume it through people. They trust a person, and they're going to consume it from that person, whether that person, there were nights on my show when I would summarize some of the stuff I did on MSNBC in a quick TikTok post. And that TikTok post would get 1 million views in 4 minutes. Because people didn't want to. There was an audience of mine that only consumed me on social media. I used to teach a class at Syracuse, and when I started the class, I said, how many of y'all have ever watched MSNBC? No hands. How many of you all have followed me on Twitter at the time? Almost all the hands. Those kids only knew me through Twitter. And had it not been through Twitter, they didn't know who I was. My little Twitter beefs were the main things that they knew about me. So I think you have to really, as a creator, as a content creator, as a news person, you have to feed all of your audiences. Because there's some people who really just consume it through MSNBC and cable. There's some people who just consume it through TikTok or Instagram. I have people who are like, I love you on Instagram. That's their only means of getting information from me. And that's real.
Do you think traditional cable news can still compete with independent media and podcasts, especially amongst young people?
Among young people, no. The average age of, I think, all cable at MSNBC was 60. The median age was 60. At Fox, it's 70. That audience is super elderly. They're dedicated, and in the demo, they still win because they have a cumulatively large audience. But you're talking about on a really good night, Fox has 3 million people watching. And of that 3 million, they'll have 500,000 in the demo. So just because they have such a big, but 3 million, there are 270 million adults in the United States. There are 350 million people in this country. So if you have 3 million, that's good, but it's not even a good basketball night. You know what I mean? So I think we overestimate the power of Fox. It's not Fox, it's the ideology. And those people that are of that, and I think it's a religion. I view MAGA as a religion. And they will consume their religious belief system no matter where they have to get it. They'll get it from Fox. They'll get it online. They'll get it on X, Twitter. They'll get it wherever because they believe in the religion. And they don't care where they get it. They just want it.
I was going to ask, so in knowing all of that with social, right, and how people consume you, what was your exit plan before the firing? Because you seemed like you were aware of where people were finding you most.
I was very aware of it. And I think it did annoy my bosses that I was so on social media. I think they really did not I don't think, and it's not just them again. I think none of these cable outlets or none of these news outlets, none of them like social media. They would love it if their reporters would get off of it. But at a certain point, they had to let folks go on Twitter. I used to work as a digital editor way back in the day. I'm an old bitch, so I've been around for a really long time. When I used to work in local news, I was a digital editor at NBC Local in Florida, and they would not let us break news online. We would literally have juicy news stories, and we'd be like, "Can we post it?" And they'd be like, "No, you can't post it until the 5 or 6 o'clock news." We're like, "That's crazy. We know this at 2 o'clock.
Everybody else gonna have it by the time
It's already right." And I used to say to my team, "We come on at 7. Everybody knows everything we're saying. By the time we start, everyone knows this news. We are not here to give people the news. We're here to analyze the news because they already know it. It's already been online." And so I think the media is resisting this change because they really want to be the ones to break the news. Yeah. But note that the New York Times, sometimes they would hold stories for Rachel. They literally would do that because they so much wanted to be on her show. Mm-hmm. She has that kind of power. Mm-hmm. But in general, the New York Times, if they have something at 6 a.m., it's up at 6 a.m. Unless they're holding it specifically for her, it's going up. Mm-hmm. So that has changed a lot. But I think there's been a slow progression in terms of management at these companies understanding you need to use all of your venues. So to your answer to the question, I always used all my socials. I was very hyper social. I jumped on TikTok early. I jumped on Twitter very early in 2009. I stayed on all these socials despite maybe making my bosses uncomfortable because I knew that I was speaking to different audiences on these different platforms. So we had always thought eventually we were going to go independent. My husband, is in the business. We have a production company. We're working on documentaries. We're doing other stuff. We had always planned to eventually be independent. I just didn't know that God was going to make me do it right away.
Mm-hmm. Did you read The Original Sin by Jake Tapper?
I did not.
I wonder what you thought about that book because, I read it and I thought it's going to make a great miniseries one day, right? But, for me, it's like the one thing I was missing from the book was accountability from corporate media. It's like, Jake, you sat there for years and watched the same things that we all saw with our eyes and probably had a better view because you probably saw them up close and personal, but never told anybody that. But now you want to sell it in a book. What do you think about that?
And that's why I didn't read it. I'll be honest with you. I'm not going to read it because, number one, I think that Joe Biden is not relevant anymore. Mm-hmm. And I think that all that book did was reveal what you just said, is that you have a nightly news show. So you 5 nights a week could tell us what you know. Mm-hmm. But you know something, and you're like, this is so juicy, I'm going to hold it for a book, really? Mm-hmm. Woodward did that. Bob Woodward had an interview with Donald Trump in February of 2020 in which Donald Trump said, yeah, I don't know, that COVID is airborne. You didn't feel like you had to tell us that, super journalist, to expose Richard Nixon? You didn't think it maybe was helpful? Maybe 1 million people wouldn't be dead if you had done your job as a journalist. So I am not in the, everybody lauds this man as a great journalist. If you're a great journalist, tell us what you know, like right now. Mm-hmm. When you know it, tell us. And with Jake Tapper, you had the same job I did. Mm-hmm. You were on TV 5 nights a week. If you saw that this man was declining, maybe say that. Don't put it in a book.
It might have forced the party to do something a whole lot sooner.
Think about it. I mean, we're talking about, and we both know this, there were people like almost physically fighting Joe Biden to have him get out of the race in the summer of 2024.
That's right.
If a year before that, if in the summer of 2023, there had been credible information out that there was no way that he could even physically continue as president then, let alone run again, think about the different world we would live in had that happened a year earlier. And there had been a primary, let's say Kamala won, that she fought through a primary with Gavin in it and with all of their stars in it that they wanted to be in a primary. Not at the end when it was too late, when it had to be her, because otherwise all the black voters would have been like, sorry, no. Right. But you're talking about we would have had a year earlier to maybe not be in this hell that we're in right now. And journalists have to take some responsibility for that. If I had information, I promise you, if I had information like that in 2023, it would have been on the readout. Like every night.
That's why I think it is relevant to talk about Biden. Because, I don't know how much blame to put on him, but a lot of this is because he chose to run for a second term.
I agree. I think a lot of it is his fault. And I think the ego involved in deciding my ambition to remain president is more important than the threat I'm saying existential. So if I'm saying Donald Trump is an existential threat to democracy, it's incongruent for me to then say, I think I'm the best person to stop that threat. If I'm just being objective about myself. Like, look, I have this fan in here because I'm all in perimenopause. So I recognize when I tell you this, man, I know my limitations. Yeah. You know what I mean? I remember doing one of those you do a sort of an off the record with these leaders. And I did one with a very, very, very senior Democrat who I will not name, who knows Joe Biden very, very well, who said that they don't think they could do the job that he's doing at their age. And they're like 20 years younger than him. Wow. And so the reality is people had doubt about him running. I definitely did. And I also had issues with morally, him remaining in the race because I think his policies in Gaza were immoral. I think they were a moral disaster. I think they are the stain on his legacy. And so I had a lot of issues with Joe Biden, to the point where we couldn't get Joe Biden or his people to come on our show anymore because I was so critical of him on air. But yeah, I think that it had people had another year to play this out, I think Democrats would have absolutely pushed it and forced him to not run.
You had reposted a clip of Teslin Figueroa on Jesse Waters' show, right? And she was saying that the Democratic Party should be using the tone that Jasmine Crockett does. She sticks it right to Trump and them Republicans. Do you feel like Jasmine Crockett should be the leading voice of the party?
Yes. And the thing is, what the Democrats do to me wrong is that they prioritize whose turn it is. Like, Democrats are very orderly. They're almost too orderly for fascism. You know, in fascism, you can't be orderly because the other side is messy. And Donald Trump stays messy. Everything he does is random, but it also exudes power. It just says, I have so much power that I don't care about the rules. And I think for ordinary people who are not political, who don't pay attention, to them, that just says that he gets things done.
Yeah.
And so they'll even look past some of the horrible things he gets done to say, but he's effective. Because he doesn't say, I don't have 60 votes. I can't do that. That's what Democrats say. He doesn't say, I do it, but it has to get out of committee in the House. That's what Democrats say. And Democrats say, AOC, we like her. We support her. We think she's great. But we have this other person that needs to be the chairman of this committee because they've waited in the wings and now it is their turn. The person who was picked over AOC has now passed away. That's what Democrats do, right? And in the case of Jasmine Crockett, a rational party facing actual fascism would say, who are our most effective voices? Who do the people listen to? Who do the people trust? Who do the people want to hear from? If it's Jasmine Crockett, we don't care who's in line.
That's right.
She's about to be the leader. We're going to put her as the head of whatever this committee is, make her the head of oversight, and put her on TV every day. But that isn't what Democrats do because they're orderly. And orderly is insufficient in the face of fascism.
And I'm glad you said that because it's like, even with position, I don't care that Hakeem Jeffries is the Speaker of the House. Like, nobody's listening to him. Nothing he's saying is resonating. Nothing he's saying is cutting through. Like, he's not even the person that I feel like should be fighting this type of fight. But a Jasmine Crockett is, AOC is. So I don't know why people just aren't getting behind them. Forget what the leadership position is.
Right. I just think the Democratic Party and, look, I've been a Democrat since I was old enough to vote, but I'm barely hanging on, honestly, because at this point, the party is not bigger than the future of my kids.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, I have 3 children. I have, a daughter and 2 sons that have to live in this country as Black people. And fascism don't work for me, and I'm not willing to cede the country to Trumpism and MAGA simply because I'm clinging to this party. So people getting all mad at Karine Jean-Pierre for saying but I'm not mad at that because I'm like, at this point, it isn't, who cares what the party label is? Give me an effective fighter. If Jasmine Crockett is the most effective fighter, give me Jasmine Crockett. And I really don't care what you have to move around or who you have to disappoint in order to give me her. Just give me her because we need a leader.
I guess my problem with what Karine Jean-Pierre said is it's like, different than Jake Tapper to me. You're just trying to sell a book because you were there. And I've said this when she was press secretary. I'm like, I know you're lying for this man. Like, you can watch her go up there and lie for this guy. So it's just like, now when you come out and you say things, what was the quote? I had the quote. We need to be clear-eyed and questioning rather than blindly loyal and obedient as we may have been in the past. The past was just 6 months ago.
But the difference is, I'm a little different than you on that. Not only because she is my friend, I do love her. I will full disclose that she is my friend. But also, that was her job. Like, spokesperson. No, her job was to represent Joe Biden's policies and to represent Joe Biden. That is not Jasmine Crockett's job. That is not Hakeem Jeffries' job. But that was her actual job. Like, the spokesperson makes no policy, can make no changes. They are not in charge of what this man does. They simply have to translate what he says to you. That's it. That was her job. And she did her job with the loyalty that would be expected of somebody who's also personally loyal to Joe Biden. So I set her aside in the sense that was her actual job. It is not anybody else in the Democratic Party's job.
But you said something that's true. You said she had to translate what Joe Biden was saying.
Yeah.
What about when none of us can understand what the hell he's saying?
I don't understand what Trump is saying. No, you're right. I mean, look, I thought Joe Biden should have been forever vice president. I thought he was great vice president. He was a great wingman for President Obama. But as president, again, I had some policy differences with him. But I would still take him and if his brain is mush today over Donald Trump. I'll be honest. I can't understand the thing Trump says. And the difference between Trump and Biden is that Trump is also incoherent, says stupid shit every day, but Fox cuts down his incoherent babble into what sounds like normal speech. He is so edited. That announcement he did when he announced that we were bombing Iran, go back and read it. Don't listen to it. Read it.
You called him a moron. You said he can't even get World War III right.
Michael Wolff, who has written I've written one Trump book. And I promise you, when I did my Trump book, I interviewed dozens of people. Not one ever told me Donald Trump was smart. And these people who liked him. Not one ever told me he was honest. Not one ever told me he was a good man. Normally when you interview a bunch of people, when you're doing a biography, somebody will say, that's a good man. Nobody said that to me. And these are people who like him and voted for him. They didn't even say that. People who are associated with The Apprentice. I mean, nobody. Michael Wolff is the one who called him an idiot savant on my show. He was on the Joy Reid show and said he's an idiot savant. He said he's a moron. And I think this party, it reminds me of Jesse Owens in the 1930s goes to the Olympics, and Hitler, when all the Aryans are there festooned out in the stands waiting to see the dominance and superiority of the Aryan race. And instead they get Jesse Owens beating everybody. And to the point where Hitler left the stadium. He's like, I can't even sit through this crap. We are watching what Abraham Rasool, who used to be the South Africa's ambassador to the United States, he was one of our first guests, and he said that this is a supremacist administration. That's somebody who comes from South Africa, who fought apartheid, and who views the Trump administration as essentially an apartheid regime. But they are also incredibly incompetent. They are exposing the fallacy of the superiority of apartheid, because everyone they put in place to replace everybody black, everybody that's a woman, everybody that's gay, they're like, get them all out of here and bring us our WASP Christian conservative men and a couple of women. We will now show you the superiority and the way you make America great again is these people. The TV host from Fox,
Pete Hegseth,
a complete incompetent, is now going to be in charge of our war because he's the defense secretary for some ungodly reason. Pam Bondi, who I used to watch her when she was in Florida, who's really just a spokesmodel for the Justice Department. She doesn't do anything. Kash Patel, who was, people loved him on podcasts. I'm not sure what that makes him, the head of the FBI. Dr. Oz, seriously. I mean, seriously, he was on Oprah. I mean, okay. RFK Jr. in charge of our healthcare. Really? I mean, this is a joke. It's almost as if they are joking with us and putting these fools in place to run our form. So, yeah, you can say whatever about Biden. Donald Trump has put together a cartoon of an administration. It's a cartoon.
It's like SNL.
It's like SNL. If SNL did a skit, you would be like, brilliant. But this is real. We're stuck with this. And this clown show has now launched a war with Iran. Really? Would you let your son or daughter join the United States military today to go serve in a Confederate named? They're turning all the Confederate names back on all the bases. So now you can go to your Confederate themed, training, and then go off and fight for, Trump? This is a clown show.
That's why I feel like you have to blow up the whole Democratic Party. And I feel like the Democrats need a whole new ideology because they lost to that. So what does it say about, seriously, what does it say about them?
Oh my God.
Literally, I feel like they lost to that, so you got to just blow it all up. There's nothing to be said from anybody in that old regime, to me.
It is, wow, when you just said that, I just got depressed.
Mm-hmm. There go your fan right there.
Let me get my fan on for a second. I think I'm having a hot flash.
Yes,
I think you gave me a hot flash. They did lose to that. It's depressing.
Yeah, people voted. That's what they chose for whatever reason.
Well, I think they voted for it because it's entertaining. And and honestly, I think we make, I'm going to turn this off because it's too loud. I think that we assume all voters are like the people who listen to this show and watch this show, or people who watch MSNBC. One of the things I definitely took away from my experience covering now multiple elections with Donald Trump in them is that we were in the bubble. You know, where I worked, we were deep in a bubble. We were watching the joyful, beautiful, you know, Megan Thee Stallion is performing with Kamala. We saw these huge crowds. And you know, we hear from our audiences. I run into MSNBC people in the airport and in the movie theater and they all seemed so certain. And it all seemed like so much enthusiasm. We were in the bubble.
But then you had a lot of people who were offended by stuff like that. Like they was like, this is what they do whenever they want to reach black people. They go get a rapper and they put on a show and a concert. They're like, yo, we want to know about dinner table issues. Right. And I think that's where Democrats miss.
I think that's what made people push toward Trump even more, is because they felt like he was going to get to those issues, even if you can't understand what he's saying when he does
100%. And that was where that was where our bubble gave us a limitation, because we were only talking to people who get information through MSNBC, through us, and who know politics and who read the New York Times. You know, Kamala Harris won every single state where 40% of people or more have a college degree. Every state. Trump won every state where fewer than 40% of people have a college degree. Kamala Harris's audience were college-educated cable news watchers. People who read the news, watch the news, read the Washington Post, know the issues. They voted for her. But most people aren't that.
Yeah.
Most people don't do that. Most people have things to do. People ain't watching the news all day. People aren't watching CNN all day. People aren't paying attention to that. They're living their lives. They have work. They have to work. Some people stand to their feet all day and work. They don't even get to sit down. People are busy. People got kids they got to deal with that are acting up in school. They got to come out of work and miss money to go deal with their child in school. People have lives and challenges and problems. And Democrats don't speak to those people because they're just talking to the college people. They're just talking to the collegiate people. And they're just talking to the people who pay attention to the news. Regular, ordinary people were like, I can't afford my rent.
That's right.
I can't afford food. I cannot afford gas. I can't afford things. This dude may seem like a clown, but to me, he speaks like plain, normal. He sounds normal, and he's entertaining. Look, I might as well be entertained. Neither of these parties going to help me anyway. This dude's funny. He's doing his stupid dance. I don't care. If
Free
I'm
chicken sandwiches from Chick-fil-A.
Listen.
He
did that?
Yes, he did.
Yes, he did. You remember
Yes,
he was in Georgia.
He did.
You don't remember that?
I don't, but I'll tell you, I think it's more than that. I think that there was just a couple of issues that he spoke to that the Democrats weren't speaking to in a real way. Like, you know, it's one thing, you can't tout Bidenomics when people can't afford their rent.
Right.
You can't tell me that the economy is good and tell me that, you know, the reason the economy is good is because the stock market is booming. The people I'm talking about don't have no stocks. You know, so when you can make people feel like they got more money in their pocket and make people feel safe, that's when you got them. And say what y'all want. During the first Trump administration, when he was just out there with those stimulus checks and those PPP loans and everything else.
That Nancy Pelosi is the one who passed.
But he put his name on it.
But he put his name on it.
You know
And
what I mean?
Biden
and Biden didn't want to do that when it was his turn.
Right.
So it's like when stuff like that happens, people will forget what you said, they'll forget what you did, they'll never forget how you made them feel.
Right. No,
And the hood felt that.
Yeah. No, you're absolutely
It just did.
And the thing this is the difference between a Democrat and a Republican. Trump had nothing to do with the stimulus checks and actually opposed them. But when those checks passed and Nancy got the checks for him, he said, guess who's getting the credit for it? Not Nancy, not the Treasury Secretary whose name is supposed to be on the checks, me. He understands the theatrics of politics better than any Democrat because he came from where I work. He and I used to get a W-2 from the same company. He worked for NBC.
Yeah.
To me, I call him... He is the Puffy. I've been calling him the Puffy of politics. I will not call that man anything but Puffy. He's the Puffy of politics, both in the sense that he might be a diddler, but also in the sense that he has no actual talent. Puffy is. Way back in the day, way back. My husband and I used to do a show called Video Dope. We used to actually, our first production together was we used to do a music video show back in the day, back in the 90s. Y'all don't remember music videos, but I'm old, so I remember. So we used to do this reggae music video show, and we used to play this track that had Puffy, Biggie, and this third rapper. And the third rapper was just all right. But Puffy's bars, he was kind of mimicking that rapper. He didn't even know to try to mimic Biggie. He's mimicking this other guy. And we used to play the song because it was Dolly My Baby remix.
Oh,
and so I love
yeah.
that song, Dolly My Baby, you know, because I love the song. So we used to play it sometimes on the show. And I used to be like, that dude thinks he's a rapper, but he's not. What he is he's a good A&R, right? He's good at the theatrics of hip hop. The videos were very expensive. Everything looked really chic. Everything was really shiny. He was like marketing hip hop. He's not good at doing and performing hip hop, but he was a great marketer. That's what Trump is.
I agree.
Trump is a marketer. He doesn't have talent. He's not a good businessman. He went $900 million in the hole. He inherited $317 million, lost it all, and then an additional $600 million. He bankrupted 2 casinos in Atlantic City. Like, you cannot be a good businessman and bankrupt casinos in Atlantic City. His businesses have failed all over the world. They've ripped his name off of, you know, he doesn't even own, I think he owns like 6 big buildings in Manhattan, but they're like 60 with his name on it because he just slaps his name on it. He doesn't pay his contractors. He doesn't pay his bills. You know, he's a deadbeat. Like, what are we doing?
I was going to say, damn, you sound like my baby father. Crazy. I'm sorry.
And he also is 5 people's baby father. He got 5 kids by 3 women. If he was black, okay. Yeah. So the reality is, but what he's great at is just the marketing of it. The sales. He's a pitch man. He's a concierge.
Isn't that what campaigns are, though?
Should be.
Yeah.
And Democrats don't. Jasmine Crockett she's both brilliant, a great lawyer, and also great at the marketing, but the party they don't think that that's the most valuable thing. They think that legislators are the most valuable thing, people who can do legislation that nobody cares about.
So what would you say to people that, all right, because we just saw him say, we bombed Iran, right? What would you say to the people that's like, oh, this was going to happen anyway? Because I've been seeing it a lot, right?
Yeah.
Like,
I saw people say that about Kamala when it did it.
This was going to happen anyway. This was going to, it just happened now. You know what I mean? But they were saying that this was inevitable to beat. I mean, like, to go around. This was going to happen.
What I would say to those people is you have to remember that Bibi Netanyahu is essentially prime minister for life in Israel. And he has been prime minister off and on since the 90s. And he has attempted using the exact same arguments to get Bill Clinton to go to war with Iran, to get George W. Bush, who was a super sucker for, and Bill Clinton. Bill Clinton is so pro-Israel that when he was free and clear and had survived impeachment, he pardoned a guy called Mark Rich, got himself nearly indicted for doing it. Mark Rich, who a former Israeli prime minister asked him to pardon. This guy was the world's biggest tax cheat. He was such a big tax cheat. He was on the FBI's most wanted list with Osama bin Laden. He pardoned that guy whose main crime, the main accusation against him, is that he traded arms with Iran during the Iran hostage crisis when Iran had taken our hostages. He traded arms with them, that guy. That's how pro-Israel Bill Clinton was. He wouldn't go to war, even though Bibi made the exact same case. They're going to have nuclear weapons any minute. You got to do it. He wouldn't do it. George W. Bush, who, unlike his father, would not hold the Israelis to account for any settlements. They could take whatever land they wanted. They could go in and snatch people's farms, olive trees. He didn't care. He was just so pro. He pretended to be an evangelical. He was a Methodist, but he acted like the super evangelical, totally pro-Israel. He bombed Iraq for no reason. Iraq had nothing to do with weapons of mass destruction, nothing to do with 9/11. He still went to war against them, but wouldn't do Iran. What Bibi wanted was us to do a war against Iran and Iraq at the same time, because Iran's Shiite majority now controls Iraq, and he knew that would happen. He wouldn't do it. Go on to Joe Biden. There's never been a more pro-Israel person in the White House than Joe Biden.
Obama too.
Oh, but Obama and Biden couldn't stand each other, so I think he knew he couldn't get Obama to do it.
But Obama gave Israeli military the most money that they've ever
money they ever
received.
had. He did all the policy, stopped the UN, our UN ambassador from, they would veto any kind of. One time they actually abstained, which actually, weirdly enough, in geopolitical terms, is like a huge earthquake, right? For him to have let us abstain when Israel was being condemned by the UN. But yeah, Obama, I know he probably figured he couldn't get him to do it, but he wouldn't do it. And then you get to Trump first term. Trump has they've got homages to him in Israel. They love him so much, right? So in his first term, he wouldn't do it because he was surrounded by normal people. Then you get to Joe Biden, who literally has allowed Israel to commit genocide with our money in full view of the entire world, with the condemnation of the UN on the table, and with Bibi Netanyahu unable to travel to multiple countries because he's a war criminal. Joe Biden was like, he's my friend. He can do what he wants. He literally was letting them annex the West Bank in our face. Joe Biden literally would not stop them from dropping 2,000-pound bombs on hospitals, schools, mosques. He didn't care. He took UNRWA and essentially illegalized the only aid agency that feeds Palestinian kids and let them bomb the food kitchen guys. He was like, you want to bomb Jose Andres and kill a bunch of his people? I'm not going to do anything. During the war on Gaza, multiple American Palestinians were killed. And this is on top of Shireen Abu Akleh. This was an American, dual citizen American journalist. Killed him. He didn't care. Okay, so Joe Biden, wholly in the whatever Israel wants, you can have it. He didn't do it. And again, CNN, it's an amazing compilation that we played on our show. He's been making the exact same case. Any minute now they're going to have nukes. Any minute. Didn't work with Clinton, didn't work with Obama, didn't work with Biden, didn't work with Trump the first time. The only person who would have done this, the only person who's sucker enough to get talked into starting a war with Iran in my lifetime is this guy.
I wonder why, though, because I remember when it was that book that came out, it was Trump's piece, The Abraham Accords and the Reshaping of the Middle East.
Yeah.
And the author was like, Trump said to the former Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu, fuck him. Like, he's like, I don't, like literally, that was his exact quote. So how did that change? Like, what happened?
And literally, can I tell you, I want to say 3 weeks ago, the Quincy Institute, Trita Parsi, the Quincy Institute was posting on his Substack that Trump might be in place to actually make a deal. Because remember, Obama did this Iran nuclear deal where he got Iran to agree to not enrich to create nuclear weapons, but to only enrich to power their country, right? For power. And Trump was so mad about the black guy doing that he literally negated the deal, tore it up, and Iran started enriching again. They still were not creating a nuclear weapon. None of our intelligence services believed they were creating a nuclear weapon. They were just enriching because, of course, they have a right to enrich. They are their own country. Then Biden comes in. Biden does not put the deal back in place. So this non-enrichment deal has been gone all through the Biden term. For whatever reason, Biden did not try to revive the nuclear deal. So then Trump comes in. He starts talking to the Saudis, who I think also want a nuclear bomb. And they should, because they're in a country, they're in a region with an expansionist nuclear power, Israel. So I would want a bomb too if I were them, right? But all of a sudden, Trump goes from talking to Iran. He was having talks with Iran, apparently, trying to come to a deal, willing to screw Bibi Netanyahu, leave him to the side and do a deal, to suddenly being like, not just we bombed their facilities, but regime change. Overnight, he starts talking about regime change. What is happening? What changed? He said he was going to give it 2 weeks. He gave it 24 hours. I would love to know how Bibi Netanyahu got Donald Trump to change 20 years of his belief system in 24 hours.
What should we be concerned about? Because, we were talking about it all weekend. I really don't know, because I guess everybody has to wait to see what's next and see what Iran does. But what should we as Americans be concerned about?
I mean, I would be concerned because Iran really does control some of the most lethal proxy terrorist groups in the world. And just to be clear again, Iran did not start this war. Iran did not attack Israel, and they did not attack us. And people are like, for the first time, the U.S. has struck Iran. Wrong. The United States is responsible for what Iran is. We did that. If you fly into Dulles Airport, it's named after, I think it was John Foster Dulles, but there was two Dulleses. There was one Dulles that Eisenhower made the CIA director, and the other Dulles was made Secretary of State. And their mission throughout the 50s and the early 1960s was to topple any government that didn't obey. Any non-Western government that didn't obey. They toppled my father, his country, the Congo, which had its first democratically elected president. They had him assassinated because he wanted to control the resources under the soil of the Congo. They did that. The CIA did that and later admitted it. They did it in Chile, where they put a dictator on top of them so that they could control the resources under Chile. They tried to assassinate Fidel Castro, but couldn't get away with it. They couldn't do it. But in Iran, in 1957, the United States overthrew violently their democratically elected president, Mossadegh, prime minister or president.
Girl, you are killing these names. I'm like, she is doing
Easily.
good.
I'm a nerd. But I mean, reality. So Mossadegh comes in and Mossadegh says, I need to audit the oil company that we now today call BP. Because BP was exploiting the oil under Iran, which is one of the most oil-rich countries on earth. And BP was controlling it. And Mossadegh said, my people, the Iranian people, need to be benefiting financially from this. So we want to audit y'all. The British were like, you can't audit us. And he was like, I'm going to do it anyway. And they said no. And he said, fine, I'm going to nationalize Iran's oil. Iran's oil belongs to Iran. And the United States and Great Britain overthrew him and elevated this Shah of Iran, which is like a king in Iran, a Persian sort of king, who had been a, kind of like the British king, not a lot of power. Suddenly we turned him into a dictator, who then was a dictator over the people of Iran for 26 years. Brutal. Grabbing people off the streets, which will sound familiar now, throwing them in prison without trials, which should sound familiar to us. A full-ass dictator we put on top of Iran. And that dictator stayed in place as punishment for the people of Iran wanting their own money and wanting control over their own oil. And that dictator was overthrown in 1978, 1979 by young students who got together and did a revolution and put in place what we have now. And they were religiously motivated, but at first they didn't say that they were going to suppress women's rights. Because Iran was like a normal country, they had nightclubs and normal. But this version of Iran that was created under Khomeini, under Ayatollah Khomeini, it started out as a student movement that was overthrowing a dictator we put on top of them. So we attacked them before. We created this monster. And we create monsters all over the world because the U.S. and the West believes they have a right to control other countries. South Africa had nukes that Israel helped them get. Right. When the blacks took over South Africa, we said, you can't have nukes. Ukraine had nukes. That's where most of the nukes from the Soviet Union were. When they got free, the West said, yeah, you can get free, but you can't have nukes. Why? We said, India, you can't have nukes. India said, I'm getting them. And then Pakistan said, well, we in the neighborhood, to keep ourselves safe from India, we want nukes. And I believe it was Russia that helped them get nukes. So India and Pakistan have nukes. That's why they're not at war. The reason North Korea has nukes, because we, the only country in the world that has ever dropped nuclear bombs, bombed Hiroshima and Nagasaki in their neighborhood. And so they said that they are a dictator. I have no love for Kim Jong-un. He's a nightmare. He's a monster. But he said, the only way I'm going to survive in this neighborhood where y'all dropping nukes on my neighbors, I want nukes. Everyone wants nukes because we drop nukes on Japan. And Iran wants nukes because an expansionist power is in their neighborhood. Israel is a country that keeps growing by taking territory from other people. They keep threatening other people. They keep attacking. They blew up Hezbollah's radios. Children died in that operation. That's terrorism. So if I'm Iran, and again, no love for that regime, horrible to women, treat women horribly, won't let women out of their homes. They're imprisoned in their hijabs. They're imprisoned. They can't go to school. They're horrible. But the reason there are people rallying around them is they're like, these people can't come in here again. They keep switching our regimes whenever they don't like what we're doing. And now Israel attacked them, and now we're joining them. Of course they want nukes. If I'm Iran, I want nukes. Because the only thing that keeps me safe from Israel and the United States is nukes.
I feel like Dems are losing that messaging battle already. Because if it was me, I would be stressing the fact that he promised no war.
Come on.
I would be stressing the fact that he said that he was going to end wars that were already happening, but now he's got us into another one. Instead, they're saying he doesn't have congressional approval. But it's so easy for them to be like, well, neither did Obama when he went into Libya. Neither did Joe Biden when he went into Syria. Neither did Bill Clinton when he went into that other country I can't pronounce, but I'm sure you can.
I know
right? Kolobov, what is it? Kolobov?
The Kobar Towers?
No, something with a K. I don't remember right now. But my point is, other presidents have done that. That shouldn't be what y'all are leaning on to say he didn't have congressional approval.
Right. We haven't declared war since World War II. We didn't declare war in Korea. We didn't, which is still a war that's not ended. We didn't declare war in Iraq. We didn't officially declare war against Iraq. We just bombed the shit out of them. We just dropped, bunker buster bombs on a civilian population and killed maybe 160,000 people or maybe more. We didn't declare war on them. We didn't declare war in Vietnam. We just went in there and started killing people. So yeah, the whole he didn't declare war thing, bullshit. Not a good argument. Not strong. And I think the problem too. A lot of Democrats are for this.
Ooh.
The problem is you've already gotten, what's his name, in Pennsylvania, John Fetterman, coming out and cheerleading for what Trump is doing. Look at how many Democrats were for the Iraq war, an undeclared war against a country that had done us nothing. Saddam Hussein, horrible man. But if the people of Iraq were sick of him, they should have overthrown him. What I've seen in the world is that brown people are pretty smart. When they get good and sick of people, when they get good and sick of a dictator, they overthrow them. They don't need us to come in here like boss man and tell them what to do and to pretend that we have a moral authority we don't have. And so my problem with the Democrats in this is I suspect a lot of them are for this because they too believe Iran. I've seen the whole string of people. Iran must not have a nuclear weapon. You know what? No one should have nuclear weapons. None of them. Least of all us, because we used them. We used them on people. And that war was essentially over. We killed those people in Hiroshima and Nagasaki to see what the bombs would do.
What do you think we'll see first, World War III or nuclear war? I don't think we'll ever see nuclear war in our lifetime, but I do think we'll see a World War III.
And the reason you won't see nuclear war in our lifetime is that everyone who would deem to threaten global annihilation has nukes.
Mutually assured
destruction. And I think what would, in a weird way, make the Middle East... You know how they say the most polite society in the country is Texas? Because everybody's packing?
Everybody got guns. That's right.
Maybe the Middle East would be calmer if there weren't just, what I spoke yesterday to a Navy veteran who used to fly those bombers that they used to drop the bunker, but the 3,000-pound bombs. And he was telling me, he said, don't get it twisted. This war is not about a real threat that Iran posed to anyone. They don't have nukes, and they didn't have nukes, and they weren't making nukes. This is about a geopolitical push, the same way it was when we went after Mossadegh. We would rather an Iran with a dictator who's a puppet than a free Iran who could defy us and take the oil we feel entitled to. In this case, Israel wants to be the hegemon of the region. They want to be the United States, the big boy in the block, and have no competitors. And their biggest two potential competitors are Saudi Arabia and Iran. And so the idea here is to make them the unquestioned superpower in the region. That's what this is about. It is not about Iran imminently having nukes, because apparently their 2-week nuclear window has been lasting since 1996.
That's true. That's true.
Well, I have a question. Because now there's been a conversation around the regime change post that Trump put on Truth Social, because the Secretary of Defense said something completely different in the beginning. That's scaring people as well too. So when you talk about all these changes and like the big guy in that area, like, well, what does this actually mean for us if what he wants happens?
It's a great question, and nobody listens to Pete Hegseth. I'm actually not surprised. Trump hired him because he likes him on TV. I don't think anybody at the Pentagon actually listens to that man. That man's busy renaming military bases to put Confederate names back on him. Like, who is this guy? Like, I could be defense secretary by his qualifications. He and I are both qualified legally. I'm like, what's happening? I'm worried about it too, because if he's talking regime change, he's sounding like George W. Bush. That is George W. Bush talk. And when people start saying regime change, you can't do regime change with bombs. You can only do regime change with an invasion. And if Donald Trump is going to get suckered into an actual Iraq war style war, and we're going to get pulled into that, a lot of people are going to die. A lot of Americans and a lot of Iranians are going to die. And Iran is not Iraq. As Tucker Carlson, weirdly enough, and I hate agreeing with Tucker Carlson, but he bled out Ted Cruz on that, because Iran is 92 million people, young, an average age, maybe 35 years old, young. And they are committed. They are not Iraq. Iraq is a put-together country that Europe made. Europe just drew a big circle around some Shiites, some Sunnis, and some Alawites and said, you're a country. Good, congratulations, you're Iraq. They never held together. They were always basically 3 countries. The Kurds were their own thing. They were all their own thing. They didn't have unity, and they all hated Saddam Hussein. And he was like in a minority sect that wasn't even the same sect as all the other religious people. So it was a hard country to hold together. Iran is far bigger, huge population. They have the Straits of Hormuz, which they could close. So I think the first thing that's going to mean for us is gas prices are about to go way up. Because if they close that Strait of Hormuz, which is that waterway which most oil passes through from the Middle East to go to Europe and to go to the U.S. and to go everywhere, when they close that strait, if they do that, you're going to see oil prices shoot up. The U.S. is going to be tempted to respond to them closing the Strait of Hormuz militarily because, of course, we believe we own all the oil, right? It's our oil. You can't stop it. If we then attack the Strait of Hormuz, if we really declare war and go to war with Iran, if you think the Iraq war was a shit show, wait till you're fighting Iran. Iraq, which is much smaller but had chemical weapons we gave them, couldn't beat Iran in a war. The Iran-Iraq war was a mutual disaster, but Iraq didn't win with our help.
Wow.
Because Iran has a navy. Iran is a serious country with a serious military and with commitment. They have commitment. And they will not be, they used to be an empire. Persia used to be an empire. These people have pride. They are not going to let us just walk over them again. We did it to them before. And there's a reason they say death to America. They hate us because we fucked with them too many times. We need to stop. One thing Trump did have right for like a hot minute is that we do need to stop being in everybody's business. Why is Marjorie Taylor Greene right on that? And no Democrats are saying that. How about if we make an argument, can we stay out of the world's business for a minute?
When he's not taking his own advice.
And now he's not taking his own advice.
Yeah, which should be the messaging to me from everybody.
One would think.
The Joy Reid Show. Make sure you subscribe to it right now. And where can they follow you, Joy?
You can follow me on thejoyreidshow.com. We made it real simple. I'm also on joyannereid.com. That's my Substack if you want to read what I'm saying instead of just listening to me yap.
Thank you for coming to teach today. And don't be a stranger.
I would love to come back.
Please,
I appreciate you. Thank y'all.
She was quoting them Dragon Ball Z names up the wazoo. I love it. I'm so proud of you. Thank you.
It's Joy Reid. It's The Breakfast Club.
Wake that ass up.
Early in the morning.
The Breakfast Club.